Commissioner O'Day.
Present.
Commissioner Tarrick.
Here.
Chair Norton.
Here.
Commissioner Henderson.
Here.
Commissioner Barnard.
Here.
Council Representative Mayor Peck.
Here.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And can we have a motion regarding the approval of the August 7th meeting minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Okay, motion by Commissioner O'Day.
Second.
Awesome, I like that you're here. Okay, second by Commissioner Henderson. Any discussion or corrections? Great. Meeting minutes are approved. Wow, we're just rolling right through this. Report from the chairperson, which I guess tonight is me. I don't have much. I will say that a couple weeks ago, I was in Walgreens and there was a Times call sitting on the counter, and we made the front page for the August meeting, which I thought was really sweet. And it was nice. It was just a great story about the work that happened in the meeting. And I love that we, that we are thought of in the media and that this is an important commission to the community. So I've been saving this for this meeting. The only other thing tonight for my report is, unfortunately, he's not here, but Commissioner Fenster recently resigned the commission to move to Boulder. We would like to recognize all of his efforts and his participation over the last several years as a commission member. And I believe that we have a plaque and a thank you for him, but just to publicly recognize all the work that he put in to this commission for so many years. So if you're out there, Commissioner Fenster, thank you for all of your service. All right. Next, we will move on to communications from HPC Staff Liaison. Yes, sir.
Would it be possible to invite Commissioner Fenster to a meeting and have a presentation and then we get a picture?
Yes, sir. And in fact, I believe he was invited tonight. We just didn't get confirmation whether he's going to attend, but we can continue to try to invite him to a meeting because I think that would be nice as well. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Staff liaison report. All right, it's a lot, so buckle up. So I will update on this State Historic Fund grant application process under old business. One item on at your seats, a representative from the Callahan House Board stopped by to give invitations to their annual tea, which will be held on October 5th from 2 to 4 p.m. at the Callahan House. And this is something they do annually, and they are, wanting to engage with this commission and, continue that, process of making sure we're all working together. So if you're able to join, I know they would appreciate it. And they do ask for an RSVP by September 26th. Moving on, we've had a couple of inquiries regarding certificates of appropriateness, but we haven't had any new applications to date. There may be something for October, but I'm not certain. It just depends on when they get it in. We do have one administrative tax credit application under review for some foundation work. It would be administrative because it is primarily the rear of the house, and it really is not anything that would impact the appearance, but it would, ensure that the foundation it stays in good shape. They're doing some, looking to do some additional piers and such. So working on that for the preliminary one. Website and surveys. I know this has been a topic of discussion from members of the community, as well as I know Commissioner Jacoby has had a lot of thoughts on this as well. There is a group of planning staff that's been working and reviewing the website with communications staff to identify revisions that are needed, as well as a timeline for completion. We will be working with them regarding the historic preservation pages, including making sure the landmark photos as well as the cultural surveys are accurate and in the right place. Associate Planner Melanie Esky does continue the process of taking new landmark photos for the website. So, the city's website was overhauled last year, and there were definitely some glitches along the way. So, we're trying to fix some of those hiccups. So, and I know there's some concerns with the historic surveys. Additionally, it was brought to my attention by members of the community that there were a number of surveys that had been done in the historic East Side neighborhood that were missing from the website. Doing some digging, we found that we were missing a number of digital records. So we've been really working to get this taken care of. Commissioner Jacoby did provide me with a USB drive from Bob McLaughlin from HENA that does contain a number of surveys that we did not have in our records and are not on our website. So as we go through the survey, reviewing and reconciling our surveys and getting everything for the website, we'll be taking care of getting those on. And that opened up a bit of a snake pit in the interest of transparency. So in my search, because the East Side surveys did have references to CDs on file with planning and development, I started digging through boxes to look for CDs and found some, but also found that we have a number of surveys from the Old North neighborhood that were completed in 2013 and 2014. So, and there's some additional surveys that at least current staff was not aware of. It's a function of we've had a lot of turnover in this role over the last 10 years. I think I'm the fifth person in this role. So that knowledge continuum and transition, there were definitely some gaps, but I am working to resolve that because it's desperately needed. So I will note that there are several East Side properties on the website, on our website that for the cultural survey map that only have photos. We did locate a tranche of 2003 surveys that correspond to those that only have photos. So we are working to reconcile these. I've spent a lot of time in the last couple of weeks indexing our surveys and just trying to figure out what we have and where the gaps are. So I will continue to keep you updated on that. It definitely will take some time, and it will coincide with our overall update of the Planning and Development Services website as well. So that is a lot, but we've definitely been busy over the last few weeks. So to be continued.
Thank you for that report. Is there anything that the commission can do to help with this snake pit of new documentation?
I'm not sure yet, but stay tuned. A lot of it is digging through things that we thought were something else and making sure that there is not anything of importance in them. So we'll call it archival research. But stay tuned. I think once we get everything, just figuring out which end is up and really reconciling, what we have and what needs to be posted on the website, et cetera, it'll be a much smoother process. So,
Okay. Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for staff? Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. So we will move on to public invited to be heard, and these are for topics other than what is on the agenda for the public meeting. And we have a few people signed up tonight. So first is Dido Clark.
Yes. Thank
you. Gotta get real friendly with it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. We are not quite to you yet, Ms. Clark.
Okay,
I
no
apologize. My other sheet is blank. If anybody would like to make some comments, though, now is your time. Okay, then we'll move on to the public hearing for the 824 Kimbark Street demolition request. So I'll turn it back over to staff.
All right, thank you, members of the commission. So we do have a request to demolish the house at 824 Kimbark Street and replace it with a larger two-story sort of bungalow-style home and detached garage that would have a second-story ADU. The proposed concept plans from the applicant are part of your package. Because this is a property that's more than 50 years old and it is located within the original 1 square mile town plat, it is subject to review. Any demolition of such properties are subject to review by the Historic Preservation Commission, subject to Section 2.56.180. This particular property meets that requirement. Should say MUD zoning and not SF, but I apologize for that oversight. So this is located on the east side of Kimbark Street between 8th and 9th Avenue. It is a single story in its existing condition. It is a single story late Victorian style home. The lot itself is a little more than 10,000 square feet. The existing home is a little more than 1,000 square feet and has a 280 square foot detached garage. This is the property in question. It's currently yellow, but it is a late Victorian. It's hard to tell from this picture. But in addition to the horizontal wood siding, it does have the scalloped and decorative shingles on the gable ends that are pretty representative and characteristic of that particular style of property. So this home was originally built in 1902. It had an addition put on it in 1924. It was originally a T-shaped floor plan. It's now a rectangular floor plan because of the additions. The garage was built in 1937. And there is a cultural resource survey, which was part of the batch that we discovered, the tranche that was provided to us. This survey does note that it does have an overall high level of architectural integrity, even with that front picture window that was added at some point in, I believe, the 50s. Let me just double check my date here. Yes, that picture window was added in 1958. Aside from that window, the remaining 1/1 wood sash windows appear to be original. And as mentioned, it does display a pretty high standard of historic integrity, especially given that there have been no exterior alterations to this property in more than 50 years. So it is, in its condition, is still very much within that period of significance. The applicant does state that the conditions of the house foundation in particular make rehabilitation economically infeasible. So the applicant did submit an engineer's report, which is included as part of your package, regarding the foundation at this property. The report is described by the engineer as a, quote, limited structural observation of the property, and there were no material samplings, testing, or analysis performed. The report does note that foundation repair would be costly, but it does not provide any specific cost estimates or alternatives for preservation. It just simply has that statement that it would be cost prohibitive without any further definitions. So there are 3 sections of the foundation. There's the original stone foundation underneath the original portion of the house, and then there are 2 clay block and CMU additions or foundation types under the later additions to the property. The engineer's report does include a number of photographs, and there are separations and gaps in the stone section, including areas where framing is not bearing on the stone. This clay block and CMU sections are not grouted or reinforced, and per the engineer's report, were presumed not to bear on a footing. It was noted in the engineer's report, and I think this is important to note, that foundations that don't bear on a footing are consistent with the era in which they were built. So this is not an uncommon situation that you would see in homes of this vintage in the historic East Side and other parts of the city. So as I noted, the 2008 Cultural Resource Survey for this property is one that was part of the tranche that we located, and it strangely was also missing from the State Historic Preservation Office database. I've since submitted it to the CLG coordinator at the state to get it loaded into their database to make sure it's there. This will be part of our reconciliation process, is making sure that everything we have is reflected in that database. So this survey was provided to staff by a community member following posting of the notice sign, and it is included as part of the package that you received and is posted on the website. So the survey does state that the property would be eligible for local landmark designation with the owner's consent, given that it does have that high level of structural integrity and is representative of common construction techniques and architectural styles of the time. Again, because it is, I would say, because it is 50 years old within the original town site, and the survey indicated that it could potentially be eligible for landmark status, it has been referred to the full HPC for a review. So this body will be the one that determines the path forward. So the ultimate question relating to this, because of how the demolition code is worded and set up, is whether there is reasonable cause to believe that should be 824 Kimbark Street may be eligible for designation as a landmark without the owner's consent. That is the standard for demolition, for not approving a demolition permit. So going through the 5 criteria for designation without the owner's consent, technically there are 6 in the code. The first one is a petition. However, that petition requirement is not there for demolition reviews. So we have 5 criteria we're looking at. Does the property meet one or more of the designation criteria in subsection A? Does it have extraordinary historic significance? Does the condition prevent the owner from reasonably preserving the structure? Designation would not create hardship, and promotion of the public interest outweighs any resulting diminution of market value. So those are the 5 criteria you're looking at. As noted in the report, that first criteria, does it meet one or more designation criteria in subsection A, and that is the section that refers to designation with the owner's consent. Designation without the owner's consent is a much higher bar, as it should be. And as noted in the staff report, there are 4 of the designation criteria that are met. In particular, the first criteria is, does the landmark or does the property have character, interest, or value as part of the development or cultural, artistic, social, economic, political, technological heritage of Longmont? And it is an example of this architectural style that was popular in the early 20th century. Additionally, it is representative of the smaller working class homes that are that are really common and really are part of the fabric of the historic East Side neighborhood. The other criteria it would meet would be, again, it portrays a historic era characterized by a distinctive architectural style, and it embodies elements of architectural design, detail, materials, or craftsmanship that represent an innovation. It's not necessarily an innovation, but it does represent this style. And then the geographic or regional importance, and that would be that this property is located within the original town plat. And if the historic East Side National Register Historic District boundaries included this portion of the neighborhood, the property would be considered a contributing structure per the cultural survey. So the next criteria would be, does this property have that extraordinary historical significance? And that's a tough one. Staff really isn't of the opinion that on its own as an individual building that the subject property might meet this standard. We have no evidence that there was, someone associated with Longmont's history or the state's history, someone, significant in that regard that the home is associated with. And then, the significance is as a part of a larger neighborhood rather than an individual structure. So the next criteria is, does the condition prevent the owner from reasonably preserving the structure? So this is another one of those, we need more information because the applicant has indicated to staff that the foundation is in poor condition and it would require costly repairs. We do have an engineer's report, but the report does note that it is a, quote, limited structural observation. It does not include cost estimates or any potential options for foundation repair beyond a statement that it's cost prohibitive. So it's hard to really say in the absence of quantitative figures. The next question is whether designation would create hardship, and relating to the previous criteria, I would say we need more information. I can say this property was purchased in December per the assessor records, and the applicant did recently go through a pre-application meeting with the Development Review Committee, as noted in the staff report, regarding redevelopment of the site. So there are some discussions going on in terms of what might be acceptable. The original proposal would not meet our code requirements on a few different levels. The current proposal appears that it would meet the code requirements, but we would need more to do some additional research and analysis to really nail down and to be able to assert that confidently. So again, we don't have any cost estimates at this time for foundation and other repairs. So the fifth criteria is whether the promotion of public interests identified in section 256.010 by designating the landmark outweigh any resulting diminution of the market value of the proposed landmark. So this is really for the commission to determine. It is part of the original town plat. It does represent the early history of Longmont. It is not part of the East Side National Register District or a local historic district, but again, it was noted that if those boundaries were extended, it would be a contributing structure. There's always the question of housing stock. Demolition would facilitate construction of a new single-family home and add an accessory dwelling unit to our housing stock. But the things that are important to note is that historic buildings are lost historic neighborhoods are lost one building at a time. The original town plat represents the original square mile of town as it was incorporated in 1873. And the subject property is part of this early history of Longmont. At the same time, the subject property is not part of a designated district, either at the local or national level. So the question really is whether it meets the criteria, that higher threshold for landmark status without the owner's consent. The proposed replacement concepts that have been presented are appear to be substantially larger than the existing home, and do appear also to be substantially larger than the existing single-family residential buildings on that block, which, with the exception of a two-story home at the corner of 8th Avenue and Kimbark Street and a couple of multifamily buildings, are almost entirely these small single-family residential structures. So the question for the Historic Preservation and Commission and potentially City Council is whether the public benefit of adding a single housing unit outweighs the public benefit of preserving the house at 824 Kimbark Street, and also whether or not it rises to that higher level of designation without the owner's consent. That is the threshold for denying a demolition permit and referring it to council. So with that, John Larkin, who is the applicant, he is here if you would like to make any statements.
Good evening. I want to make a few things clear. That engineer's report that she referred to, she left out a lot of it. That report is in reference to the fact that there are 3 sections to that building, and there's a section in the back that was put on after the fact with no permit. So that's why you don't even know it's there. Okay, there's a back porch that's sitting on the dirt. The area that has the CMU, they added the CMU to create a basement. The actual foundation is clay block, and it's only about this deep. So this is the second house I've done like this. I did the one at 830 Kimbark 2 years ago, because that one ended up, we couldn't save it either. So we ended up taking that one down and putting up a house that was already approved for size, because we were going to remodel it originally. So I'm not trying to do anything different at this point in time other than get back what I have in it. That's all I'm trying to do. Okay? To preserve this, we would have to jack that house up and try to put a new foundation in. But if you read the full report, the floor slopes 3 inches. There's two fireplaces in there that are not supported above or below the attic. And there's a lot of other things that are just not in good shape. And all we're trying to do is put a home that makes sense there. That's all we're trying to do. I've been a contractor for 30 plus years. I've been dealing with these kind of things for a long time. And once we went through the planning phases and found we cannot put what we were originally planning there, we decided just to put a good house there. And we wanted to put an ADU in there so that there's more housing, add to the value of it. And that's all we're trying to do. And on that block, there's only 3 houses that are single family, that one and the 2 next to it. And they're both set up for businesses, but they're single family at this point in time. So we're not trying to make a big difference in the neighborhood. We're not trying to screw anything up or do anything like that. We're just trying to make it work. So we like doing the Craftsman and the Victorian homes. I like doing those. But financially, I guarantee you this could break me if I have to try to restore that house. There's just no way we can do it. It will double the cost of it, and I will lose. I can't even tell you, because the value will not be there. It just won't be there. And so when it comes to affordable and everything else, it's not going to work. So all I'm asking is to start over and do it the right way. That's it. I want to make sure it's a good house, it's got a good ADU, and it fits in the neighborhood. It only seems taller because we're putting the second story on it. And the reason we're putting the second story is we can't put a basement in it. If we put a basement in, the sewer lines come in 4 feet off the floor. And it just doesn't make any sense to do that. So we're just trying to do the right thing, trying to do right by the city and protect it as best we can. But I'm also trying not to go broke in the process. So that's all. I mean, if you read through the engineer's report, you'll see some of the stuff. I mean, the walls are caving in the basement. The floor is off by 3 inches, and it's on a flagstone foundation on the original house. And the one I had to do at 830 Emory was exactly the same way. We just couldn't save it. And we actually tore it down in 4 hours because it was so unstable. So all I ask is you give me a chance to do it the right way. Thank you.
John, I think it's significant, the background of the engineer.
No, that's, your statements, I believe,
He's
are
my partner in
done.
this business.
Okay, but
You have to go to the microphone.
I can do it.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Didn't sign in?
What he was in reference to there is that the engineer we specifically asked to come and do this report is one that has a background of saving historic buildings. I went to one of my engineering referrals, people I use all the time, and I said, do you have somebody that knows how to deal with historic buildings? And so they sent her specifically to look at this. She and I spent 4 hours out there going through the entire thing to make sure we knew what was going on. And also the garage itself is encroaching on the property on the north side, or the north side. It actually overhangs their property line. And it's in the civil drawings, the survey that we did. So our only intent is to get the right answers. And when she and I walked through that, she saw that it was unsafe. And it would be, to save the building, to be able to even lift it, to put a foundation on it would be totally ridiculous. But I will make sure the house fits the neighborhood. That's what I want to do. Okay? Thank you. Were there any questions? No. Okay.
Yep.
Now is the opportunity for public who have signed up to speak on this particular matter. I don't know if we can ask questions at this point.
Typically, questions are asked following the public invited to be
Yeah,
heard.
we wait, yeah, okay. So Ms. Clark. And when you come to the podium, please state your name and your address, and we have 3 minutes for each for public comments.
Okay, my name's Dr. Dido Clark. I'm co-chair of the Historic East Side Neighborhood Association, HENA. Now, this house doesn't technically fall within our boundaries, but it's part of the whole neighborhood, part of the square mile. What I want to say is the arguments I'm heard from the new owner that sound completely disingenuous to me. No one made him buy the house. The other house he bought, he raised. You can say that the foundation is untenable if you have to put up a second story. So that would apply to pretty much all the houses in the historic neighborhood. All they have to do is say, I want to put up a second story. Oops, foundation won't bear the weight. Oh, we've got to knock it down. No one made him buy the house. He must have known the condition before he bought it. We have a beautiful city here in Longmont that's undergoing a lot of changes, but in its heart, it's one of the loveliest cities I've ever known. And I've traveled a lot. I've lived in lots of places, including London, where I grew up, and there's a whole heart and soul to it that we lose one house at a time. So my plea is, could we at least keep the front looking like an old house? You know, it's like a mullet. You keep the front up and then you do whatever out the back. But otherwise, we're just giving carte blanche to anyone to buy an old rental that's kind of run down and then go, oh, it's too expensive. Got to knock it down, put up whatever. Okay? So that's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is John Larkin.
That was me, I already spoke.
Oh, that was you, John. Thank you. Sharon.
Sharon O'Leary, 534 Emery Street, co-chair of Historic East Side Neighborhood. Guess who discovered the survey? Ding, 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 ding. The Historic East Side has consciously applied for grant after grant after grant after grant to get cultural surveys. So if somebody wants designation, we're going to make it easy for them. And if somebody wants to demo, they've got to go through quite a bit of due process. What I want to say is that the majority of homes, my heart does not ache for this investor, are uneven and lopsided. And if the overhang is in the neighbor's yard, if it's over 20 years, guess what? Doesn't matter anymore. Poor excuse. Okay, I think you should recommend no demolitions until the city has their house in order. Okay, because what do you do after a demolition? Oops. Oh, guess what we found when we had time to go through the records? So if this new purchaser for investment property can't wait till the city gets their house in order, that says it really is just about making a buck. That's all it's about. Okay, downtown is a historic district, and they got that because of the number of homes there. I want to know, was this home included? They got state and fed money. So was this home in part of the inventory? I'd like to see the list. I'd like to see the list. Thank you. Send it to me. I would love to see it. The other thing that I want you to really consider is that the east side of Kimbark is Pinnacle, because that is the boundary line between commercial and residential. So what he did on the other side of the block doesn't matter. He abuts up to downtown. All is fair. I'm going to guess, he's going to put a 2-story or, high building in the back, and then he's looking in the backyard of the residential area with his ADU, or with the second story of his house and the ADU. So I think our sensitivity for the east side of Kimbark has to be more thoughtful as far as size in relationship to the residential neighborhood that abuts up to it. And then as far as businesses, like smells and lighting. We were pushing years ago for a transition zone, and downtown said, well, don't worry. Well, you know what? If this goes through, we're going to worry. We're going to worry quite a bit. It's kind of nice that everything kind of blends. We just kind of roll in from downtown into our neighborhood, and we all look more alike than different. I would say there's like three things that don't look alike, and they're the anomaly, not the old historic homes. So I would ask, demolition is a high bar. Let the city of Longmont get their house in order. This gentleman can wait on his investment property. And once the house is in order, then better decisions can be made, because you can't do anything after oops. Thank you. And I appreciate the job you do very much.
Thank you, Ms. O'Leary. I believe now is time for commissioner comments and discussion. So, Commissioner Barnard, did you want to ask a question?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just trying to get
Do you have any insights?
Sure. So we have been provided by the applicant 2 potential concepts that are fairly similar, kind of arts and crafts, 2-story bungalow style. In terms of process, since the property does not require any sort of subdivision, it would probably be essentially, for redevelopment of the property, we don't require site plan review for single family homes, and accessory dwelling units are now reviewed at the building permit level per the 2024 state legislative state statutes. So it would be, we do have residential compatibility standards and residential design standards, so it would go through that process. In terms of timing, you know, there's nothing that says you have to have a building permit for the new before you can get the permit to demolish it. So that's kind of where we are.
Commissioner Terrick?
My question is in regard to the idea of preservation being cost prohibitive. So my first question in regard to that is in regard to what are you comparing it to? So restoring, preserving the house, the foundation, the walls is cost prohibitive. It would cost more than the demolition of the house, building of a new house, and building of a new ADU? Or that was not clear to me.
It's the value in the end.
Please come up to the podium, sir.
It's simply the value in the end.
What does that mean? Can you
If
clarify
I
that?
have to spend $600,000 to save the structure and bring it up to code, and I can only sell it for $400,000, that's completely wasting time.
Okay. The other, I have a couple other questions then. We would then need to see actual cost estimates because in this report, I don't see any actual figures.
Okay, so all of this, I can do that. The problem is it costs money. And right now,
But we can't make any decisions unless
Well-
we have actual numbers.
well, I can tell you, it's going to be somewhere between $170 a square foot and about $300 a square foot, depending on the level of finishes on the home and what the city's going to require of me. Because right now, they're asking me to pay $26,000 for the privilege of tearing down 3 trees. Okay?
Well,
So
that's
these
not
are
our
not your concern. I understand
No,
that.
it is my concern because I'm not going to make a decision if I don't actually see cost estimates, numbers of,
Mm-hmm.
to preserve this house, we need to do A, B, C, it's gonna cost this.
It's about 1,000 square feet.
But you're not understanding, we need a report, we need it in writing, I can't just, I don't think we can just have it spoken at this meeting. The other question I have too is, have you looked at other alternatives? So, I know I have an old house, very old house with a lot of the same problems. We had to fix it, but then we wanted something bigger, so we took off that back part, like you're saying, there's a porch that's in the dirt, we have something like that. We took it off and we put on an addition. So we got a bigger living space, but the front of the house is exactly the same. We had to do foundation, basement. The addition matches the front. So have you looked at other alternatives?
The front of the house is unsafe is the problem. The original house is sitting on flagstone and it's falling apart.
And I think maybe looking at the phase 3 with beyond the, what did it say? The general assessment and limited visual observations. So if there was a more specific report, a phase 3 with exactly what has to be done and the cost estimates, I think, I'm not speaking for myself, but that would make it easier for me to make a decision about how cost prohibitive this really is.
We can do that.
Okay.
I can put those numbers together, but my experience, it'll be very prohibitive.
I think that in order for us to consider the demolition under criteria 4 that staff presented to us, we need hard and fast numbers from contractors or others who would be conducting this work.
Okay, I'm a general contractor. I'm also a
Okay.
realtor, so I'm very familiar with this neighborhood in this area. I've been here for 10 years. So I try to be very careful about how I do this.
Okay.
And I can put numbers together and I can show you because
That is what we're asking for. We're not inviting more discussion, but we are asking for more. We would like you to be present to answer questions if we have more. So I think Commissioner Terrick is just asking for specific costs of some of these items so that we can evaluate that for criteria 4.
All right.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. I need you to hit the. Okay.
commissioners or staff?
Is there precedent on demolishing a house this size and putting up a very different type of structure in the neighborhood? Since I'm new, do we have other structures that this has happened to? Within that district too, so.
Currently, no. At least not under the current demolition ordinance that was enacted. It was amended and enacted by council in early 2024. So we've had one request come before the commission for a property at 844 Baker Street, and he was proposing to demolish the house and subdivide the property into 2 lots. It was another very large lot. And after discussion with the commission, he looked at, he ran the numbers and determined that it would be a good alternative after, based on feedback from the commission, to essentially do an addition on the property and build an accessory dwelling unit to get a similar effect. He determined that it actually cost-wise would work to do an addition with an ADU.
Okay. Okay.
But as far as if we've had any recent demolitions, not in my tenure.
Okay. And then my question to you was that when you purchased this, to the other commenters, did you have this in mind, or did you have in mind putting an addition on the back? What was your original intent when you purchased this? Because
My original intent
yeah.
was that we were going to put up 5 townhomes.
Okay.
And the reason we were going to do that is we had meetings with her and the rest of planning, and we asked them what their thoughts were on it.
So you
We've
purchased
been
it with
working
the intention
with
of
the
putting
intent, but
Okay.
before we purchased it, we talked to the city. And the city was very happy about the idea of putting more living space there. So we moved forward with our plan to purchase it because we thought we could because the city was behind us on that. And I was told the historical significance wasn't there for it. So we moved forward, invested the money. I live a block from there. We invested the money in the hopes of being able to make a difference. Okay? I'm not getting rich from this. We just wanted to do it. But then we ran into, when we went into our planning evaluation, I have never been in I've never felt more opposed than I did in that meeting. That meeting was brutal. Okay? And it was all I can do just to stop the meeting and just say, okay, we'll do what we can. And that's when we decided we're going to can that idea because we're not going to come anywhere close. It's not going to happen. So we figured, let's try to save the house. Let's get the engineer out here, see what we can do. I talked with the engineer. It doesn't make sense from a construction standpoint to try to save the house when it's going to take as much as it's going to take to save it. I don't mind making a house that fits the neighborhood. I don't have a problem with that. But trying to fix that is the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Larkin.
Is it appropriate for me to just follow up with some of those discussions?
Yes, ma'am.
So I had notes in my records from a November conversation I had with Mr. Larkin. He was looking at 2 properties, one on Mountain View and this property. I know I advised that the property on Mountain View would not require historic preservation review. I advised that the property on Kimbark did meet the criteria for historic preservation review. Without looking at the details of the property, I could not provide a sure, no problem, but definitely we would need to take a look at it. As far as the 5 townhomes, I'm not sure who Mr. Larkin spoke with, but within the Development Review Committee, which I am a part of, it was determined that there was no way that would comply with anything in our code to do 5 townhomes in the orientation that was proposed. Tree mitigation, that is in our ordinance, that's handled by a different department, but we do take our mature trees very seriously in Longmont because they are such a important part of our neighborhoods. But just to clarify, I did, from before Mr. Larkin bought this property, make it clear that he would need to do historic preservation review for the demolition.
Thank you. So the questions before us are regarding these 5 criteria. Do folks on the commission have other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
I have a motion to postpone decision on this until further information can be gathered per our discussions here.
Okay. So Commissioner Barnard proposed, Commissioner O'Day seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Doesn't look like any opposed. Okay, so Mr. Larkin, if you could gather the requested information and bring that back before the commission, I think everybody would feel like they could make a more informed decision. Okay. Okay. I will say that this property was not on Compass. You were correct, Jennifer. It was in our internal Argus database, probably because it was an SHF project. We did not have the full, at least digitized, we didn't have the full information, but it was in there. So as you move forward with reconciling those documents, I think that'll be super helpful. Okay, so next we have new business. I don't believe we have any before us. Moving on to prior business. First is the Beaupre Nishida Farms Annexation Preservation Plan. I will turn it back over to Jennifer.
Sure, and I don't have too much to say on this except that this commission did discuss this particular project at their March 6, 2025 meeting. Prior to that, there had been discussions regarding the Terry Lake sewer project. There was some within the county basically running a new sewer line adjacent to Highway 66. So there have been discussions over the years of this particular property. So the discussion really centers on what an appropriate preservation plan would be for this particular property. As background, we do have an application under review for annexation, as it's one of those complicated properties where part of it's annexed, part of it isn't. So we do have an application essentially for annexation of this property for development, and it's still under review. So the next steps would be completing review by our development review committee, getting the annexation agreement drafted, and then going through the public hearing process. As far as the annexation agreement, any preservation plan would be part of an annexation agreement. So that would be a condition of an annexation agreement, would be a preservation plan. So the material presented this evening is kind of moving forward, kind of where the applicant team is now, to present some ideas for future discussion, for additional discussion, and go from there. And with that, I will turn it over to Cameron.
Yes.
Didn't know if you were Pam or going to do.
Good evening, Cameron Grant with the law firm of Lyons Gaddis, 515 Kimbark Street. As Jennifer mentioned, this property and the structures on this property have been discussed at a number of stages over the past almost 30 years, relating to their historical significance and the historical significance of the story of the Nishida farm. Just for clarification, I think it was clear. We don't have any demolition proposals in front of you or in front of the city. This is an annexation. We're working our way through that process. We anticipate that historical preservation component will be part of the annexation approval, most likely in the annexation agreement. What we're asking is some guidance from this commission as to how we address that. And so what I'll do is I'll walk through a little bit of the history of the project. Some of you were here. I don't think all of you were here in March when we discussed this. So we'll go back over that to a degree and then be open for any questions that you have. Also here is Pam Hora with Tetra Tech, who is leading the process on the annexation if you have any questions that are too technical for a lawyer, which will probably be most of what you ask, but I'll do my best. Yeah, we fake it. So I'm representing the property owner, Maple Leaf Investors. Maple Leaf has owned this property for over 20 years. There have been some other applicants in the interim that have had proposals. It's now back in the hands of Maple Leaf, who is pursuing the annexation. They're also partnering with an adjacent property, the 100-acre Puma property that was annexed a number of years ago, with the intention that the two together will form one development. But really what we have before the city right now is the annexation of approximately 57 acres that does have 10 structures on that remain from the prior vegetable farming operation. The proposal that Maple Leaf has is to eventually demolish the structures after going through the appropriate process and getting the appropriate permits, and acknowledge the significant contribution to Longmont's history that the Nishida family and the Nishida farm operation has had through a different method. And we have some ideas for those methods, but those are going to take some collaboration with the city and some time. So what we're proposing now are just concepts that we fully understand have a long way to go before they become reality. So a little bit of the history. Mr. and Mrs. Nishida, and I won't torture the pronunciation of their first names, immigrated from Japan to California in the early 1940s, where they were involved in the farming operation. They immigrated to California initially. Then in 1942, to avoid internment, they actually relocated to Colorado, which was one of the few states that was allowing that relocation without internment. And so they came to Longmont. They worked initially at the Maida vegetable farm, which is another farm that you may be familiar with in the area. And then by 1953, they were able to buy their own property, which is this farm on the north side of Highway 66, right on the edge of town. And that became one of the primary vegetable farming operations in the community. There were a number of them, but the Nishida farm was quite prominent back in the day. They were known for their vegetable stands, flowers, and pumpkin patch. I used to visit the pumpkin patch when I was about as tall as a pumpkin. So I even remember going out to Nishida Farms. In 1977, the Times-Call called Nishida Farms the official Halloween headquarters for Longmont. And notably, they were the last Japanese immigrant family to establish a farm like this in the Longmont area. So they do have a significant history. This is from my heyday, that's why I included this. It's a 1985 Chamber of Commerce map that highlights all the local businesses. And if you look in the top right-hand corner, I put a red arrow there. This is Nishida Farms. Back then, I was probably trying to cruise Maine, but this is where the actual historic activity happened. Little timeline of the history. 1950s through the 70s was really the expansion of this operation, where it became pretty significant. You know, by the time the 80s came, when that map came out, it was still active but declining. And then by 1991, that industry was no longer economically viable, and they lost the farm to foreclosure in 91 or 92, as I recall. There have been a number of studies on the historical structure on the site. Back in 1997, there was an analysis done, and at that time there were 15 structures remaining. And the Boulder County Historical Advisory Board had recommended that some of these might be eligible for historical status, either at the state level or through the county. None of them were designated at that time. Several structures remain today. There are about 10 left out of those 15 that are in a pretty significant state of disrepair. In the packet that you received, there are some photos from that. I've got those here as well if you'd like to see any of them. We came back to this board in March with a request just for some further direction. And at that time, some of the comments were that, it does appear that the historical significance of these buildings may have been lost through deterioration, and that the concept of a commemorative approach to recognizing the historical significance of this operation might be a way to really achieve the goals. Obviously nothing was decided or determined, or no specific kind of binding direction, but that was the discussion. And at that time, one of the questions that came up was, well, the most recent study we had was 2021. So they suggested, can you update that and tell us what's really happening today? So we did that. I won't walk through this. This is a timeline of the historic review process from 97 through today, which I've already just covered, but we can go back if you have questions. What we did, let me see if I can figure out how to go backwards on this. Nope, I'll go this way. There we go. So I'll just pause and talk. What we did is we had Centennial Archaeology, who had done the 2021 study, go back out and do an update to their study. And their determination was that of the original 15 structures that were identified, there are 10 left, 2 homes, a number of garages, greenhouse, sheds, and that from their perspective, due to deterioration in the condition of the structures, none of them would now qualify for historic preservation under the state or the county criteria that were originally referenced in the earlier studies. And so based upon that, we're coming in with a focus and a request that you give us some feedback on the idea of commemorating the Nishida family and their presence and their activity in a couple of different ways. A concept that the property owner has been working on is collaborating with the city on establishing a library annex that is named for the Nishida family and that then contains a significant kind of commemorative exhibit talking about their history, showing images from the past, and so that people can get a feel for what happened at that time. Obviously, something like a library annex requires an awful lot more than the property owner to say, let's do that. A lot of moving parts in that puzzle, but that is an idea we'd like to pursue. If that doesn't come to fruition, other ideas would be some sort of similar commemorative feature built into another public facility on the property. I mean, there will be 160 plus or minus acres in this project. There'll be a mixed use development with public facilities, commercial facilities, residential facilities, and opportunities to work something pretty meaningful into that as the concepts evolve. So with that, the ultimate goal is to demolish the unsafe structures and establish a commemorative development. I think what we would, if I could wave a magic wand and ask for the ideal direction, at least for my client, it would be a direction that the annexation agreement for this project, should the city decide to annex, include a requirement that we establish a commemorative feature that adequately acknowledges, recognizes, and kind of perpetuates the history of the Nishida family and that operation as this project comes together.
Thank you. I have several comments. I will defer to other folks first on the commission. Okay. Commissioner Barnard? Yeah. You're on. No, let me try again. Nope.
I'm on.
There you go. You're on.
When I first came on the commission several years ago, we had a similar discussion with some property where the decision was made that we would, that the owners would put up some type of a museum type, and we went through a lot of discussion as to what that would look like. If, so, my feedback would be that if we are going to go in that direction, we need more than just intent. I would actually need to see what you're talking about, what it would look like, and what we had with the owners. I don't know. Was that Zilker?
I don't remember who the owners
Okay.
were, but it was the property down on 119.
Okay, so
That
119. And we had a lot of
destroys me.
discussion with the owners as to what it would look like, and there was a
Yeah.
lot of back and forth. And I think we ended up in a good place where the resulting display of the history of that area didn't interfere too much, didn't cost too much, but at the same time was a good demonstration of what the history was of that area. So I just ask you to consider, Cameron, that it's not just intent we're looking for, but we need to see it, have an actual discussion of what it would look like if we go in that direction.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnard. Okay, so I have many comments. My first is that this is a historic preservation commission, not a historic commemoration commission. And so I think that our primary goal on this commission is to preserve tangible places of our past. And so we would, I hope I can speak for the group, I think that is our primary goal. I do not want to jump to talking about commemoration because I think that forecloses on the idea that we need to do everything we can to preserve this place. I have a page of notes of comments for Centennial on their 2025 update. I think it is lacking and it is inadequate. However, thinking about it, what I realized is in many ways that doesn't matter because this is still determined to be officially eligible for the National Register by the State Historic Preservation Office of Colorado. So I think that needs to be our starting point, is that this is a National Register eligible property. And what is the best way for us to preserve the characteristics that make that property historic? I'd like to start the conversation from there. As you say, there are 10 existing of 15 buildings. I recognize that the building number has changed significantly over the years. I would also like to point out, I believe that you said at the beginning of your comments to us that Maple Leaf has owned this property for 20 years. Is that correct, sir?
They've owned it for a significant amount of time. I don't recall the exact length, but it's in that ballpark.
Okay. So, in my opinion, Maple Leaf bears responsibility for the deterioration and the loss of any integrity in any buildings that were on that property. It's what we call demolition by neglect. If there are certain state or federal nexuses in place, which there are not currently for this property, that becomes a really significant lack of maintenance by a project proponent. So I think it would be really valuable for Maple Leaf to recognize their lack of taking care of this property that has led to the current condition. Condition, deterioration, dilapidation, those are also not words that we typically use in historic preservation. We talk about significance and integrity. Most of what my comments for Centennial boil down to is that they actually didn't provide us a very good integrity argument. In my opinion, that property does still retain integrity. So I think that it would be really valuable, again, for us to start the conversation from there. To be clear, This doesn't mean that I think the property as is has to be retained or preserved in total. But I think that we are really far from agreeing to just commemoration or talking about demolition of all of the buildings on this property for the future. Comments from other commissioners? We don't usually do this, but do you have any questions or comments? Because that was kind of a lot.
Well, first of all, thank you. That's helpful feedback. We appreciate the opportunity
Okay.
to kind of have the dialogue, because that's
Yes.
the stage where we are. To the extent I can remember,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Barnard, I think to your point, procedurally, we're very early in the process. This is a Boulder County property today. Our goal is for this to be part of the city of Longmont. Any discussion, should we get to a commemorative discussion about how that comes to pass, will happen during the planning and specifically probably a site plan process and some other kind of collaborative discussions that will probably be a year or two down the road. So there will be certainly some significantly more detailed discussions and probably many more discussions. So my expectation would be that should we go that direction, that it would not be unlike that property in 119 you referred to in terms of process, at least. And then Commissioner Norton, to your point, that's appreciated. And I'm also glad you acknowledged that the nexus does not exist today. So kind of those issues you raised are theoretical, but they don't actually apply here. However, it's absolutely appropriate to start where you want to start, and we can work through that process. And it's easy for an applicant to sit where we are and think about what we think about and say, well, this makes perfect sense. And that's why we have this back and forth, because your perspective is not one that we're very good at anticipating all the time. And so I appreciate it, and we will take all of that to heart. And as we move this through the process, we'll come back and address that.
So again, coming from a relatively new person on this commission, I'm curious, what's the oldest actual structure on the site? Because I'm looking at pictures and I was scanning through the documentation. It says 50s, but then there's, obviously they were there earlier than that. So I'm just wondering what the oldest structure is there.
I'm sure it's in this report, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
I believe it's 1940 for the original dwelling.
So the house, okay, that was what I was, and which one is that? When I was looking at the picture, you can point it out to me later, but I was trying to figure out what was original and what was.
It's probably either that house that I'm showing on the screen there,
Okay.
or there's one other home. I doubt it. I don't think that's the one. It could be that
Okay.
property right there.
Okay. Thank you.
The barbecue grill, I think, is newer. Or is that a shopping cart? I think it's a shopping cart.
If they're 30 years old, eligible for statement.
We can include that. All right. That's all I have. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Like this meeting was over. Okay. We also have, and thank you, Mr. Grant, I appreciate it. Thanks. We appreciate it. We have old business, the SHF grant application for historic surveys.
Yes, so we got the letter of intent for the SHF grant I don't have a slide for that, so. We did receive, we submitted that shortly after the August meeting, and we did a couple of weeks ago received basically the invitation just to apply for the SHF grant to do survey work. We were originally looking to do both reconnaissance level of both the Cannery East, also known as the Kensington area, as well as the Old North area. Since discovering the pile of surveys in the Old North for the Old North area, I think we can pivot a little bit. And so I'm currently working on essentially starting to work on, trying to get that going. Finding those surveys was a little bit of a, so we're definitely going to be focusing more on the Cannery East. I think we can do a much more intensive survey if we focus just on that one versus trying to do two. So the Old North, a little more than half of the Old North area was surveyed in 2013, 2014. And so at some point we definitely would want to go back and continue the remaining blocks that were not surveyed at the time. I believe that survey was part of some assessments. I want to say, Mayor Peck, you may remember better than me. I want to say it might have been related to the Fast Tracks program, I believe. They were doing some assessments based on some lines that ended up not going through. So I can't recall. I cannot recall, but I seem to recall. That seems like what the intent was. So we have that information. We are working on the SHF grant and moving forward with that. We are, the deadline is September 30th, so we're cranking. We're still working to see exactly how much funding we're asking for. Our anticipation is that we would seek one of the more than 50,000 grants. We have adequate matching funds for that, so we'll go from there. And that is pretty much what I have.
Can I ask a couple questions? So the 2014 Old North survey, was that just a bunch of individual properties, or was that a district evaluation?
I'm still working my way through these.
Okay.
This is one of those where, I was like, I think I just stepped into a snake's nest here. Okay. Let me see what I have in here. Don't have a ton of stuff in here. I don't know that it was a district
where
evaluation.
Old North is?
Yes. So it is the area that is between Main Street and Venice Street, between 9th and 11th. So it's immediately south of the cemetery. So let me see what I can find here. Yeah, we do have some documentation. Like I said, we're still working on sifting through it. So I'm just looking to see real quick if there's anything I can tell you for realsies. But yeah, it was 35 properties were surveyed, and going on 8 blocks of the North Longmont addition. So
Okay.
approximately 42 acres.
And then, kind of related in that treasure trove of stuff, is apparently some more properties adjacent to the historic east side. I was looking at the map earlier, and the map is janky. It's got like a weird little cutout, and that area we talked about tonight was cut out. Do we know why?
In terms of inclusion in the historic east side?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that question. It's the only way I can describe this section of Kimbark is it's kind of this no man's land between the Downtown Development Authority area and the historic east side. I'm not entirely certain why the boundaries were drawn that way.
Okay, because I drove it today, because it's that section, it's Kimbark, the 800 block, and I think Collier's the next road over, an 800 block. And
Yeah.
it's those 2 blocks, but they looked like they would be sympathetic to or related to the remainder of the historic east side. So I don't know maybe with your new treasure trove of stuff, we can look into a possible amendment to that, to the boundaries.
Potentially, and I will
Okay.
say that I recall from our the survey plan that we completed last year that, one of the recommendations for historic East Side as well as historic West Side was it might be worth looking into amending the National Register District to incorporate more of the properties within the area. So.
Okay. And I don't mind volunteering to maybe look at the documentation that we have and see what kind of lift it would be to write a boundary amendment.
It's
Okay.
okay. We have a lot of stuff. So fortunately, a lot of the things I found for the historic East Side we already had. So,
Okay.
but there are definitely some gaps that are in the process of being filled.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
That's all I have for prior business.
Well, we are on to comments from the HPC Commission. Would anybody like to say anything? Okay. Comments from our city council representative, Mayor Peck. You're like, I'd like to go home for dinner. No, you didn't. I did. I'd like to go find my child who is wandering City Hall. Yeah, that ragamuffin is mine. Okay, then if everyone feels we're done, do we have a motion to end the meeting?
I move to end the meeting.
Sweet.
Oh, do I need to?
Nope, I heard you.
Okay.
Motion by Commissioner Terrick, second by by Commissioner Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thanks everybody.
All right.
Whew.